Hello, this is Al Edlund. This is another video in the ongoing group of presentations on the visRack project. In this presentation, what we're going to do is look at the data layer for the visRack project. We've talked in previous ones about the model we were using and how we moved forward into selection of tables. And in other codeplex projects, what we've done is we've given examples how these data tables may in fact be used to create component drill down diagrams, link drill down diagrams. But if we're going to move forward to doing our rack diagrams, we're going to have to move off of the examples where we were using Excel spreadsheets to a more focused one on using SQL Server. So let's move into a quick demo of what's in this project. What we're going to do is open data, and this is a simple data form. What's happening in the background is this data form is accessing the tables in our SQL Server database. So we can come in, for instance, look at components. We can come in and look at applications, etc. We also have some views in the database which are not editable. One of the other things we've done in this is, just like we did in the codeplex projects where we used Excel as a data source, we've given the ability to do reports. And we'll open up a report viewer window, and we're going to continue using this type of function for allowing us to do data export. Let's move into the Visual Studio project and take a look at what we're doing. Here we go. And that's the database. The the Visual Studio project is actually several small projects. We've got the one where we have the data objects. We've got a small support project that gives us Visio support, and the reason this is included is that there's calls against this library in the data objects. Our root project in this is a very small project. All it does is it's got a form that allows us to call into here. One of the reasons that we use Enterprise Library in all of these is, if we come over here to app config, it allows us the flexibility to define a data configuration. And in this case we have a default configuration, and then we have connection strings, and the default configuration allows us to go against, in this case, database visRack. It's on a local server. It also allows us to change our default endpoint, for instance, at a SQL Express implementation. The reason we stayed with SQL Server is it allows us both the ability to have a SQL Server implementation on a server, thus giving us things like reporting, data drill down, access to it from SharePoint, but we can also do a SQL Express implementation that we can ship out with when we publish a client version of this. This is also where we go through and define our exception types and policies so that we can capture data excuse me, within the application and put it in the event log. There are two primary classes in our data object we should be aware of. Class visRackData, which is basically our switchboard for moving among the different object classes, And then there's another one up here in data reports that handles our report processing. That's pretty much where all the code is. We have libraries for data definitions. In this example, what we'll do is, for instance, just look at draw, and this is where we put the properties and the objects. And then we have libraries in here for the actual data access, and within that we have our methods for data transform, our standard calls, and excuse me again, database calls. What I've also included in this, close these, is a SQL script. And where this comes in, we'll open up our SQL Management Studio, connect to SQL Express, and if we look over here in our SQL Express, we see we only have the system databases, and we have a ASP.NET DB database, which is used for testing web access. So what I'm going to do in the SQL Express is I'm going to load that file. And that was again called visRackScript.SQL. Open it. And this SQL script can be used to create a blank image of the visRack database. We've read it in. We'll press execute. It's executing the query. This normally takes just a moment. It's completed. Let's come over here to SQL Express Databases and do a refresh, and there's a clean copy of the database with the table definitions, and the stored procedure calls that map to our data access layer. Hope this helps. In future episodes, we will use this database construct for the data in our examples.